Intro music fades in and then softens to a background hum. Hello history buffs, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're tackling one of history's great epics. We all know the story of the Mongols, a tidal wave of horsemen who, under Genghis Khan, forged the largest contiguous land empire the world has ever seen. From the shores of the Pacific to the heart of Europe, their name was whispered in awe and terror. But what happens when the unstoppable force finally stops? Today, we're exploring the fascinating, complex story of the day the Mongols fell. Now, of course, an empire this massive didn't collapse in a single day. There was no one final battle where the last Mongol warrior laid down his bow. Instead, its fall was more like a colossal statue crumbling over decades, cracking along lines that had been there from the very beginning. So, where do we start? We have to go back to the source of its strength, the great Khan himself. Genghis Khan was more than a conqueror. He was a unifier, a lawgiver, and a genius administrator. He created a system, the Yasa, a secret code of laws that governed everything from military discipline to property rights. He established the Yam, an incredibly efficient postal and relay system that was the internet of its day, keeping the vast empire connected. But the system had a fatal flaw. It was built around the absolute authority of a single, powerful leader. After Genghis's death in 1227, his sons and grandsons inherited the world. Ogedai, his chosen successor, continued the expansion. The empire seemed invincible. But beneath the surface, the cracks were already forming. The family was getting bigger, the territories vaster, and the ambitions of individual princes were starting to clash. The first major tremor came after the death of Ogedai Khan. A 5-year power struggle ensued, paralyzing the empire. This was a critical moment. The Mongol advance into Europe, which had seemed unstoppable, simply stopped. The generals packed up and rode east to elect a new Khan, and they never returned with the same force. Europe was saved, not by a great army, but by an internal family feud. This became a recurring theme. The empire was officially divided into khanates, or sub-empires ruled by different branches of Genghis's family, the Golden Horde in the northwest, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Yuan dynasty in China, which was the seat of the Great Khan. Initially, they were meant to be united, all answering to the Great Khan. But distance, culture, and personal ambition are powerful forces. Think of it like a family business that's grown too big. The founder's children respect his vision, but the grandchildren and great-grandchildren, who never even met him, start to see things differently. The Ilkhanate in Persia adopted Islam and Persian culture. The Golden Horde developed its own unique Turco-Mongol identity. And in China, Kublai Khan, Genghis's grandson, founded the Yuan dynasty and became, for all intents and purposes, a Chinese emperor. He moved the capital to what is now Beijing and embraced Chinese customs. This process of assimilation was a double-edged sword. It allowed the Mongols to govern their diverse subjects more effectively, but it also eroded the very things that made them Mongol. A warrior who had settled in a palace in Persia had very little in common with his nomadic cousin still riding the steppes of Mongolia. Their interests diverged. They stopped speaking the same language, they worshipped different gods, and soon they started fighting each other. The Toluid Civil War in the 1260s between Kublai Khan and his own brother, Rikbok, was the final nail in the coffin of a unified empire. They fought a bitter, 4-year war over who should be the Great Khan. Although Kublai won, the cost was immense. The other Khans had used the chaos to assert their own independence. From that point on, the Mongol Empire was an empire in name only. The four khanates were now functionally separate, often rival kingdoms. The Pax Mongolica, the famed Mongol peace that had secured the Silk Road and allowed trade and ideas to flourish, was shattered by Mongol swords. So, let's look at how each piece fell. In China, the Yuan dynasty of Kublai Khan faced enormous challenges. The Mongols were a tiny ruling minority. They tried to keep themselves separate from the Han Chinese population, creating a rigid social hierarchy. But they were also plagued by the same old problems: succession, crises. After Kublai's death, a series of weak and short-lived emperors followed. At the same time, natural disasters like floods and famines were seen by the populace as a sign that the Mongols had lost the mandate of heaven, the divine right to rule. This fueled a widespread rebellion. In 1368, a peasant rebel leader named Zhu Yuanzhang captured the capital. The last Yuan emperor fled back to the Mongolian steppe, and the Ming dynasty was born. The Mongols had lost China. Over in Persia, the Ilkhanate had a similar story. After converting to Islam, they became patrons of a brilliant cultural renaissance. But their rule was destabilized by infighting and the Black Death, which ravaged the region. With the death of the last effective Ilkhan in 1335, the Ilkhanate disintegrated into a patchwork of smaller states ruled by competing warlords. The Mongol authority simply evaporated. The Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, the heartland of the nomads, split into two and eventually fell under the shadow of a new conqueror, Timur, also known as Tamerlane. Timur was of Turco-Mongol heritage and claimed a connection to Genghis Khan, but he built his own empire on the ruins of the old one. Only the Golden Horde, ruling over Russia from the steppes, lasted the longest. They dominated the Russian principalities for nearly 250 years, shaping the course of Russian history. But they too were weakened by internal conflict and the rise of a newly unified Russia. In 1480, at the Great Stand on the Ugra River, the forces of Ivan III of Moscow faced down the horde. No battle was fought. After a long standoff, the Mongols simply turned and left. Their long dominion over Russia was over. So, what was the day the Mongols fell? It wasn't one day. It was the day Genghis Khan's brilliant but personality-driven system faced its first succession crisis. It was the day Kublai Khan chose to become a Chinese emperor over being the Khan of all Mongols. It was the day a Chinese peasant rebel stormed a palace, the day the last Ilkhan died without an heir, and the day a Russian prince stood firm on a river bank. It was 1,000 different moments of assimilation, infighting, and rebellion. The Mongol Empire wasn't defeated from the outside, it crumbled from within. Its greatest strength, the fierce, independent ambition of its leaders, ultimately became the seed of its own destruction. They conquered the world, but they couldn't conquer their own family. The legacy of the Mongols, however, is undeniable. They connected east and west like never before, spreading technologies, cultures, and unfortunately, diseases like the Black Death. They reshaped the political maps of Asia and Europe, and their fall gave rise to the empires that would shape the modern world: the Ming in China, the Mughals in India, and a unified Russia. The story of the Mongol Empire isn't just one of conquest. It's a profound lesson in how even the mightiest powers can be brought down by the slow, inevitable tides of culture, ambition, and time. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through history. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next adventure. Let me know in the comments which historical empire you'd like to see us cover next. Until then, stay curious.